Nimrodon Zero here. It's really dark and gloomy outside, and I could turn the lights on, but it's okay. It's not that important. You don't need to see me. You just need to visualize the information that I'm putting forth. I'm sitting here contemplating something that's very important. For years and years, black people have been documented as being the spiritual guardians of the world in so many different ways. What I'm going to say to you right now is going to enlighten you to a lot of things that you probably never knew. And after reading this, I'm sure that some of you will research this and investigate this. And then, of course, there's many that won't. But that's not important. I'm putting this forth for one specific reason. And I'm going to tell you what that reason is after I give you this information. Because information, in other words, this is matter that will be forming your inner perception of your outer world. That's why it's called information. Because it starts from the inside and works its way out. But it is formed within. Okay? Years ago, there were these darker skinned people known as Moors that traveled to Europe and inspired the Europeans in different arts, which was painting, music, and other forms of entertainment. They inspired them. You know what inspiration means? It means that they brought forth different elements that showed people how to put the finishing touches on these things. They inspired them. They educated them on the arts. Nonetheless, many Europeans traveled to Africa and the Middle East to learn different aspects of art and entertainment again. So it was information being brought from Africa and the Middle East that was taken to Europe, okay, and embraced. I'm putting this forth to you right now. Okay, further down the line, the Moors, the darker skinned people, were driven out of Europe and Spain. And what happened immediately after? They fell into what was known as the Dark Ages, because the inspiration left. The light was blown out. It was gone. So they fell into darkness because they didn't realize what these Moors had brought to them until they ran the Moors out. Can you imagine that? It's like you got this friend, and the friend never realizes all the things that you were doing for them, and actually started to take them for granted. And the friend kicks you out, and all of a sudden you realize the friend realizes that you were the one taking out their trash. You were the ones that was cooking dinner for them every night when they came home. There was this plate of food that was at the table. They never realized you were dusting their furniture and you were watering all their plants, until everything started dying around you and rotting and smelling. And then you're like, wow, I just didn't realize that they were doing all this for me. So now you fall into a state of depression, the darkness. Okay? I won't tell you about the Renaissance when things started coming back to life, what was happening. You just think about it for a minute. But anyway, nonetheless, moving right along, I just wanted to put that forth. Then I want to go a little further in time to somewhere around 1622 in Virginia. Some black indentured, not slaves, but some indentured workers. When you're indentured, that means you just signed a contract and have an obligation to work under that contract for a given period of time. When that time is up, you are supposed to be paid and rewarded. That's what indentured servitude was. So you had 20 indentured servants that went to Virginia to help out there because they were suffering. They were having a hard time working the land. It just wasn't something that they were acclimated to. They would pass out in the sun. And when I say they, I'm talking about the Europeans. The Europeans couldn't handle the sun, and quiet as it's kept, they had such a tendency to try to make people work for them that they actually had tried prior to that to capture some of the native people and forced them into slavery. But they didn't know the landscape as well as the native people. And so the native people would run away and disappear into the hills and into the mountains and into the woods. You see what I'm saying? And so they were forced to contract some Africans to come and work the land for them. And they did a fantastic job. And the town became very prosperous, and the indentured servants were rewarded, and they left. Only problem was, after they left, winter came, and now it was time to work the soil again. And again, they suffered. And so they were forced to import workers to help. And so now they were faced with a problem. We're going to have to pay these people every season to work these fields and these crops. So that's when they devised the idea of slavery and bondage, because they got tired of paying an honest pay for an honest day's work. But nonetheless, they enslaved us. Here's the thing, and I say us because, of course, these were my people. I'm making a connection. Here's the thing. While they were enslaved, these Africans, these blacks, were still creative and were still creating and inventing things while enslaved. After emancipation, they continued to invent and create. I can tell you things like the stoplight, the refrigerator, the harpoon, so many other things there. I mean, there's so many different inventions, of course. And then there were the different techniques in heart surgery. Black people were the innovators and creators of so much in this country that is utilized today and has saved the lives of so many and created a state of comfort for so many, even down to the internet. I mean, you'd be surprised at how many inventions. The light bulb. What was the other thing there? Of course, there was the cotton gin. What else was there? Different types of farming techniques, different types of parts for hardware parts, of course, because that was the fellow by the name of McCoy, the real McCoy. I think that was Elijah McCoy. Okay. What else was there? Oh boy, there's so many different things. I've got a list of inventions. But nonetheless, all of these things were invented by black people living in America. All these inventions. So what confuses me? What confuses me to no end is when you have groups like the Ku Klux Klan and these neo-Nazi groups that run around with a Bible. Now here is when it really blows my mind, to show you how ignorant and miseducated some people can be, even in the face of information. You have groups like the Ku Klux Klan and the neo-Nazis that run around holding a Bible. Now, if you look at the Bible and you look at the geographical locations of most of the events that take place in the Bible, you will see that from a cultural and geographical perspective, most of this is taking place in the Middle East, which is what? Semites, people from the tribe of Shem, which are your Arabs, your Turkish people, your Iranians, your Iraqi people. These are all the people that are in the Middle East, darker skinned people, not very dark, but darker skinned than the Caucasoid. Okay. So you have these events happening in the Middle East, and you have events happening in Africa where you have Ethiopians like Solomon. Okay. All these people are in the Bible. So these are Africans and these are Middle Eastern people. But yet you will have the very same people that say that they hate dark-skinned people, and they've got some very interesting names for these people, but these are the same people that will turn around and clutch that Bible and abide by the Bible and swear up and down that the characters in the Bible represent them. Now, if they said the Romans, I'll be like, okay. But I mean, they're talking about the actual biblical characters who have names that are Hebrew names, And the Hebrews, if you know anything about the Ethiopian Falashas, if you know anything about even, some people don't realize that when you talk about Hebrews and Israelites, you're talking about Falasha people who are Africans. These are Ethiopian people. Then at the same time, if you say Khazar, the Khazar people are people from Europe who embraced the religion, and they will honestly tell you that they are not descended from Abraham, who is their adopted father, as they will put it, because they adopted the philosophies and the concepts. You understand me? That's the way that he's their father. But many of them don't originate from there. They originate from the Turkish mountains. They originate from parts of Europe that's today present day England and Scotland and so forth. These are people that used to be soldiers for hire. That's what the Khazar people were. And when their numbers got real small, that is when they converted to Judaism, or to become Jews, who were offshoots of the Hebrew tribes. Okay, this is what they don't tell you. So you got to wonder. And then you have these so-called Nazis. Nazis don't realize that most of their so-called Iranian people are actually descended from Iranians. Iranians are people from Iran and Iraq. That's where their people are descended from. So even then, they are descended from dark-skinned people. So they've got a problem that they need to address, and that's getting an education. Because if they were educated and they learned about themselves, then they wouldn't be so hateful towards people of a dark-skinned nature, because then they would realize that they are descended from dark-skinned people. They are what? The dark-skinned people are their ancestors. They are descendants of these people. I'm gonna tell you something else that people don't know and don't realize. When you hear stories in Europe about fairies, like when I watched Lord of the Rings, I had to laugh at that movie because the information there was so contrary. When you watch stories about dwarfs and fairies and magical people and leprechauns, you have got to know this, because this is very key to your knowledge base. The Aborigine people, like people that are in Australia, these are again people that migrated across the continents from Africa to Europe and settled there. That's why you have dark-skinned Aborigine people there. Okay, when you had even smaller Aborigines people, small, like what they call them, pygmies. There were pygmies that migrated from Africa to Europe, and these pygmies were the small, little people that you see that they call magical. Why? Because not only did the pygmies migrate there, but they took some of the concepts of medicine and healing and agriculture with them. So they seem magical because they could do things that the natives of Europe were unable to do. That's why when you had people getting sick in Europe, Europeans did not understand that cleanliness was important to keeping infection and germs down, because they only bathed once a year, if that much. And that's not me making this up. You got to look into the culture and the historical dynamics of Europeans to find out what type of people they were and what their hygienic behavior was like back in those times. You got to know about the castles and why they had to vacate their castles after so many years, because of the fact that there was such a buildup of filth in the castles, because they did not have a working plumbing system. There are a lot of things that you have to know about the dynamics of Europeans in order to really have a comprehension of their behavior patterns. Okay, there's a reason why they had these names, and their names are attributed to certain things in present day. But a lot of the stuff that they learned, like for instance, Italy, you got to remember, Italy, Rome adopted its aqueduct system from Cometians or Egyptians. They took a lot of the architectural designing techniques and the sciences from Egypt back to Rome and integrated it into their culture to make them the people that they became. So when they had a working aqueduct and sewer system, it was because they adopted that and learned the techniques and the architecture from another culture of people. These are some of the secrets that they keep from you. But this is me just dropping science on you right now. So it's amazing when these very same people, you know, turn around and want to act like you are so backwards and you're savages and you're, you know, their names that they call. But they don't, some of them really don't know the history. Some of them are poorly educated, and some of them are just resentful and hateful. You know, and you gotta realize too that some Italians, I'm just putting a lot of stuff out there right now because this needs to be known. There's a reason why Italians hate blacks. They call them Muyan. Muyan is just another way of saying a maroon person or a dark purplish blue person. You know, like they say the maroon or the moron. You see, when they say you're a moron, they're actually calling you a maroon person, a dark-skinned person. But it was attributed to being an idiot because of the hate. And why the hate? Because these same morons or maroon people actually were descendants of Hannibal. You see, Hannibal was a general who marched his elephants and his soldiers over the Alps or over the mountains into Rome, into Italy, and he conquered the Sicilians. He conquered the city of Sicily. When he conquered Sicily, he ordered his soldiers to impregnate all the women in Sicily. So those women had dark-skinned babies. That's why the Sicilians are darker Italians. And they have always resented that because for a long time, they were outcasts from the other parts of Italy. They were treated as outcasts, and they became so resentful that they became violent, and they became a violent group of people, okay, because of their resentment. So if you ever wonder why certain Italians, especially the Sicilians, are so violent and hateful towards blacks, it's because the blacks made them who and what they are. And it's sad to say, because in the donation of the genetic material, they ended up with women who have some of the most voluptuous, curvaceous shapes with the most beautiful features and cheekbones as a result of that introduction of new genetic material. Actually, it's old genetic material made new again. But this is just to give you a heads up on why it is that certain people are behaving the way they do, because it's either because of lack of knowledge or because they have a knowledge of their history. This is the Nimrodon Zero, and everything I said can be researched and you will find the truth. There's some other stuff I want to talk about too, but I try to keep everything down to 20 minutes, you know what I'm saying? Because in a funny kind of way, that's just about all your mind can digest at any given time. So I got to give it to you in increments. But this is me letting you know that we as black people are not the lazy, shiftless people they try to portray us to be, even in the media. But it's the fact that they don't want to identify with the truth about us. And so I've got to put the truth out there, and it's not going to be heard by everybody, but I'm hoping one or two people are listening to me. You know what I'm saying? And it's not because I'm a racist. I'm not a racist because you have to be in a position to subjugate a people to your will in order to be racist. I'm not. I'm a cultural person, and I'm a culturally diverse person that wants to put the truth about my culture out there. Manifest your pineal, bring about your spiritual essence, and elevate your kundalini. This is the Nimrodon Zero. I'm out.